Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. My husband and I are in our late 30s and child-free. Some people on child-free forums suggested I should share this story here too. So, here's our saga. My husband and I spent nearly a decade saving up to move to our coastal dream location. In early 2023, we finally took the plunge. Housing here is ridiculously expensive, think Malibu prices, so we could only afford half of a duplex. It's stunning with waterfront access and boat docking space. Unfortunately, Susan, her boyfriend Mike, and her 3 wild kids live in the other unit. Setup. Before moving in permanently, we visited for weeks at a time. The entire duplex belonged to an elderly gentleman who rented both units. The two sides couldn't be more different. Our side is a 5-bedroom, 3-bath, while the other side is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. We purchased the larger unit. Our portion includes 90% of the backyard, a beautiful gazebo, and extensive dockage, about 150 feet since it's on a corner. Their side has a tiny backyard, a basic patio, and roughly 15 feet of dockage. The rental agreement specified designated backyards for each unit, but without fences, previous tenants shared the entire space. After our purchase, Susan immediately tried to assert dominance about maintaining this arrangement. "Listen," I told her one day, "if you'd ask nicely, we might work something out." "Oh, perfect!" she exclaimed, completely missing my point. "The kids just love playing in that gazebo." Party incident. One sunny afternoon, while my husband and I were enjoying cocktails on our patio, a delivery truck arrived with an enormous bounce house for our backyard. "Susan, what's going on here?" I called out. "It's Madison's birthday," she replied casually. "Oh, and since it's family and friends only, you'll need to stay inside." "Excuse me?" I was dumbfounded. Not wanting to ruin a child's birthday, I said, "Fine, but after this, you've lost all backyard privileges." She just shrugged. "Whatever." During the party, a drunk guest stumbled into our house. "Wrong house," I said. "Susan's is next door." "Oh!" he laughed. "Susan said she owned everything and we could use any bathroom." Shortly after directing him out, Susan burst through our door. "How dare you embarrass me in front of my guests?" she screamed. "You've got 3 bathrooms and can't spare one? 2 people don't need all this space." "Get out now," I warned, "or I'm calling the police." After the party fiasco, we decided to install a proper fence and upgrade our outdoor space. The plan included a modern patio, custom fire pit, and a fully equipped outdoor kitchen. During the initial construction, Susan hovered around like a moth to a flame. I deliberately kept details about the fence vague, only mentioning the patio updates. "Oh, this is going to be wonderful," she gushed, already planning her future gatherings in her head. "The kids will love having a new place to play." When the fence crew arrived, Susan exploded out of her house like a torpedo. "Stop everything right now!" she shrieked at the workers. "You can't build that here!" "Keep working," I told the crew calmly, then turned to Susan. "This is our property, and this fence is happening." True to form, she whipped out her phone and called the police. The responding officer, Officer Martinez, listened patiently to both sides. "Ma'am," he addressed Susan firmly, "they have every right to build a fence on their property. The owner has approved it." But, Susan sputtered, her face turning an alarming shade of red. She stormed back inside, slamming her sliding door with such force that we heard something crack. The boat incident. Enter Mike, Susan's boyfriend, who proved to be just as challenging as she was. He had this charming habit of launching cigarette butts and beer cans over our new fence. "That's for disrespecting my woman," he'd yell, usually already half drunk by noon. Mike owned a 30-foot fishing boat, which became our next headache. Their side only had 15 feet of dockage, but Mike had other plans. While we were away on a business trip in March 2024, they impersonated us to evict one of our dock renters. "You're not going to believe this," said James, our former renter, when he called. "After all our discussions about extending the lease, you suddenly kicked us out with no notice. Real professional." "Wait, what?" I was confused. "We never—" The truth emerged quickly. Susan and Mike had posed as owners and commandeered the space for his boat. When we involved the police, Mike turned belligerent. "This water belongs to everyone," he shouted, swaying slightly. "Sir, the seawall is deeded property," Officer Thompson tried to explain. "You don't know nothing." Mike lunged at the officer, earning himself a quick trip to jail. By early 2024, with the real estate market fluctuating, we were debating what to do with our savings. Then came our golden opportunity. The original landlord called, desperate to sell the other unit. "I'm just done," he sighed over the phone. "Managing this from across the country is exhausting. That tenant calls me constantly about the most ridiculous things. Just promise me you'll let her finish her lease through July." "Of course," I agreed, barely containing my excitement. We created an LLC and closed the deal in record time. No realtor, no mortgage, just a quick transaction. Susan knew the property had sold, but remained clueless about the buyers. Last week, I knocked on her door, paperwork in hand. She yanked it open, her usual scowl in place. "What the hell do you want, idiot?" she spat. I smiled sweetly, extending the landlord information packet. "Just dropping off your new rental agreement. Rent's due Friday, but you can hand me the check directly if that's easier." The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. You can't," she stammered. "Oh, but I can. Your lease runs through July, but after that, you'll need to find new accommodations. We're planning a complete renovation." Update #1, April 2024. The situation remains tense. Susan's lease expires in July, and while she's managing to pay rent on time, she hasn't mentioned any plans for moving. We've served the official 30-day notice of non-renewal and even offered to prorate July's rent and waive the termination fee if they leave early. "We're trying to be reasonable here," I told her when delivering the offer. "Reasonable?" she scoffed. "You're trying to make us homeless." The weekly parties continue, and last weekend we had to call the police when her kids were throwing lit fireworks toward our boat. "They're just being kids," Susan defended them. "You wouldn't understand since you don't have any." Update #2, May 2024. The situation has deteriorated further. Susan and family remain in place, paying no rent, protected by current eviction restrictions. We've filed for eviction, but our hands are tied until the regulations change. The only silver lining is that Mike is out of the picture after a massive fight that ended with his arrest. "You'll never get rid of me," Susan yelled across the yard yesterday. "I know my rights." She's become increasingly difficult, blasting music at all hours and treating our property like her personal landfill. We're especially frustrated because we'd planned to move my elderly parents in after some renovations. Dad needs urgent shoulder surgery and Mom now uses a walker. "We just want our own space," Mom insisted when we offered our side. "We don't want to impose." My husband and I are exhausted from managing the situation while making the 2-hour daily drive to care for my parents. We're trying to stay calm and not escalate things with Susan, but some days it feels impossible. "This too shall pass," my husband reminds me, though his patience is wearing thin too. We're holding on to hope that the eviction restrictions will lift soon, allowing us to finally reclaim our property and move forward with our plans. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd have to deal with entitled neighbors when I bought my dream house last year. The property was perfect. 4 bedrooms, large backyard, and most importantly, an in-ground pool that I'd always wanted. I spent a significant portion of my savings on this house, but it was worth every penny. Things were great for the first few months until the Martinez family moved in next door. They seemed nice enough at first, a couple with 3 kids aged around 8, 12. We exchanged pleasantries, and I even brought them a welcome basket. The problem started in early June when the weather got warmer. I came home from work one day to find all 3 Martinez kids splashing around in my pool, with their mother lounging on one of my pool chairs. No one had asked permission, and they had clearly jumped my fence to get in. I walked out to the pool area, trying to stay calm. "Excuse me, Mrs. Martinez, but why are you in my pool without asking?" She looked at me like I was speaking another language. "Oh, hi, the kids were hot after school, and your pool looked so inviting. We didn't think you'd mind since you're usually at work during these hours." "I do mind, actually. This is my private property and you're trespassing. Please get your children and leave," she scoffed, gathering her things slowly. "Don't be so selfish. It's not like you're using it right now anyway." That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. The very next day, I installed cameras and caught them doing the exact same thing. I sent a text message to Mrs. Martinez. We'd exchanged numbers during the welcome basket visit. Me: "I saw you using my pool again today. Please stop trespassing on my property." Mrs. Martinez: "The kids are just trying to cool off. Don't be so uptight." Me: "I'm not being uptight. It's my private property and I'm liable if anyone gets hurt. Please stay out of my pool." She left me on red. This continued for 2 weeks straight. Every single day they would wait until I left for work, then hop the fence and use my pool. I had hours of security camera footage showing them trespassing. They even started bringing friends over, other neighborhood kids I didn't know. At one point, I counted 8 children in my pool while Mrs. Martinez and 2 other adults sat around drinking wine coolers. I consulted with my homeowner's insurance agent who nearly had a heart attack when I told him what was happening. He explained that I could be sued if anyone got injured, even if they were trespassing. He strongly advised me to secure the pool immediately, so I took action. I installed a heavy-duty lock on my gate, put up multiple no trespassing and private property signs, and even added a security system that would sound an alarm if anyone jumped the fence. I spent over $2,000 on security measures, but I figured it was worth it to protect myself legally. The next day, I got a call at work from the police. Mrs. Martinez had called cop claiming I was endangering children by locking up my pool. When I got home, there were 2 police officers in my driveway, along with a very smug-looking Mrs. Martinez. "This is him," she said to the officers. "He's the one who's trying to keep children from cooling off during this heat wave. It's practically child abuse." I calmly showed the officers my security footage from the past 2 weeks. Their expressions changed quickly as they watched multiple instances of the Martinez family trespassing, bringing others onto my property, and even moving my pool furniture around. "Ma'am," one officer said to Mrs. Martinez, "you do realize you're admitting to criminal trespassing, right? You're lucky this homeowner hasn't pressed charges." Her face went from smug to shocked in seconds. But it's just a pool. He's not even using it during the day." The second officer shook his head. "That's not how property rights work, ma'am. If someone broke into your house while you were at work, would that be okay because you weren't using it at the time?" "That's different," she protested. "We're neighbors, and my kids need somewhere to swim." "Then I suggest you look into community pools or install your own," the first officer replied. "Mr. Martinez, is your husband home? We need to speak with both of you about this situation." Mrs. Martinez suddenly looked nervous. He doesn't know we've been using the pool. He works late, and I didn't want to bother him with it." The officers insisted on waiting for Mr. Martinez to return home. When he arrived about 30 minutes later, he was horrified to learn what his wife had been doing. The officers explained the situation, including the potential legal consequences of continuing to trespass. "I am so sorry," Mr. Martinez said to me, looking genuinely embarrassed. "This will never happen again. I had no idea." I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. The very next day, while I was working from home, I heard the security alarm go off. I checked my cameras to see Mrs. Martinez and the kids trying to climb over my fence again. I walked outside. "Are you serious? After everything that happened yesterday?" "The community pool is too crowded," she shouted back. "And it's too expensive. You're being ridiculous about this whole thing." I took out my phone and called the police non-emergency number. "Yes, I'd like to report active trespassing at my property. The officers were here just yesterday about this same issue." Mrs. Martinez grabbed her kids and hurried them away before the police arrived, but I had everything on video. The officers took my statement and the video evidence, and this time they said they would be pursuing criminal trespassing charges. That evening, Mr. Martinez came to my door alone. He looked exhausted. "I am so sorry about my wife's behavior. I've tried talking to her, but she doesn't seem to understand that what she's doing is wrong. I'm going to take the kids to stay with their grandparents for a while until we can sort this out." I felt bad for him, but I stood firm. "I appreciate the apology, but I can't have your family continuing to trespass. It's a huge liability issue, and it's just plain wrong." He nodded. "I understand completely. I've already started looking into above-ground pools for our backyard. This shouldn't have happened in the first place." The next day, I got a surprise visit from Mrs. Martinez's parents. They had apparently driven 3 hours to talk some sense into me. "We raised our daughter better than this," her father said, looking deeply troubled. "When we heard what was happening, we couldn't believe it. We're here to apologize on her behalf and to help sort this situation out." Her mother added, "We've already spoken to her about her behavior. She's always been a bit entitled, but this is beyond acceptable. We're taking the kids to stay with us for the rest of the summer, and she's agreed to seek counseling." I appreciated their intervention, but I still moved forward with the trespassing charges. The police had advised me that dropping them might send the wrong message about the seriousness of the situation. Over the next few weeks, things got interesting. Mrs. Martinez was charged with multiple counts of criminal trespassing, and the district attorney's office decided to pursue the case due to the repeated nature of the violations and her behavior after being warned by police. My security cameras caught her driving by my house slowly, multiple times per day. But she didn't attempt to enter the property again. Instead, she started a social media campaign against me, posting on our neighborhood Facebook group about how I was hoarding my pool and traumatizing children by not sharing. The responses weren't what she expected. "Lady, are you insane? You can't just break into someone's private property. I can't believe you're admitting to trespassing on Facebook. You know this can be used in court, right? My kids want to swim too, but I take them to the YMCA like a normal person." The final straw came when my insurance company got wind of the situation through her social media posts. They sent me a certified letter stating that if I didn't maintain proper security measures, they would cancel my homeowner's policy. I forwarded this letter to Mr. Martinez and the district attorney's office. Mr. Martinez filed for separation shortly after, citing his wife's behavior as one of the main reasons. He moved into an apartment complex with a community pool, and the kids stayed with him during the week. The grandparents kept them on weekends, giving them regular swimming time in their community pool. The criminal case went to court 3 months later. Mrs. Martinez tried to paint herself as a concerned mother just trying to give her children a good summer, but the judge wasn't having any of it. Mrs. Martinez, your actions show a disturbing pattern of entitlement and disregard for others' property rights. You not only trespassed repeatedly, but brought other people's children onto the property without their parents' knowledge, creating potential liability issues for both the homeowner and yourself. Your behavior after being confronted by law enforcement is particularly troubling. She was sentenced to 1 year of probation, ordered to pay $3,000 in restitution to cover my security system costs, and required to attend counseling sessions. The judge also issued a restraining order preventing her from coming within 100 feet of my property. After the court case, Mr. Martinez came by again. "I wanted you to know we're selling the house," he said. "This whole situation made me realize some things about my marriage that I'd been ignoring." The kids are actually happier now. We have a routine with the community pool, and they're learning about respecting boundaries. I felt a mixture of relief and sadness for him. "I'm sorry it came to this. I never wanted to cause problems for your family." He shook his head. "You didn't cause anything. My wife's behavior did. Sometimes it takes something like this to see things clearly." The house sold within a month, and a lovely retired couple moved in. They brought me cookies and asked if I'd mind if they occasionally sat by the pool to read. I gave them an open invitation because they asked respectfully and understood boundaries. As for Mrs. Martinez, I heard through neighborhood gossip that she moved back in with her parents after the separation became a divorce. The last I heard, she was complaining on social media about her parents' community pool's restrictive guest policies. The whole experience taught me a valuable lesson about standing my ground, even when it would have been easier to give in. If I had let the trespassing continue, who knows what could have happened? One accident, one injury, and I could have lost everything I worked for. My security cameras are still up, my gate is still locked, and my insurance company is happy with my precautions. I even added a few more pool chairs and started hosting proper pool parties for friends and neighbors, the ones who ask permission, that is. Mr. Martinez and his kids still come by occasionally, properly invited this time. The kids are learning to swim properly with lessons at their community pool, and they're much more respectful of boundaries now. Sometimes the best lessons come from the most uncomfortable situations. As summer approached again this year, I put up an additional sign next to my "No Trespassing" notice. It reads, "Private property, visitors welcome with permission," because sometimes all you need to do is ask nicely. Update. 1 year later, I thought I should update everyone on what's happened since the pool incident, as there have been some interesting developments. First off, the security measures I put in place have proven invaluable. Last month, a different neighbor's teenager tried to sneak into the pool with some friends at night. My alarm system went off, the kids scattered, and their parents were mortified when they saw the security footage. Instead of fighting me like Mrs. Martinez did, they made their kids come over and apologize, then help me with pool maintenance for a month as punishment. That's how reasonable people handle these situations. The most significant update involves Mrs. Martinez herself. Her probation officer contacted me because she requested a modification to her restraining order. Apparently, she'd completed her counseling sessions and wanted to apologize in person. After some consideration and discussion with Mr. Martinez, I agreed to meet her in a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. "I've spent the last year working on myself," she told me, looking markedly different from the entitled person I remembered. "My therapist helped me understand that I was teaching my children that rules don't apply to us, and that it's okay to take what we want without asking. I'm horrified at how I behaved." She showed me her progress reports from therapy and explained how she's been working to rebuild her relationship with her children. "I'm only allowed supervised visits right now, but we're making progress. The kids and I go to the community pool together during my visitation times, and I'm teaching them about respecting other people's property by example. They've noticed the change in me." Mr. Martinez confirmed this when I ran into him at the grocery store last week. "He's doing well. He got promoted at work and is dating someone new who, in his words, actually understands boundaries." The kids are thriving in their new routine, and they've joined a swim team at their community center. The restitution payments were completed ahead of schedule, and Mrs. Martinez even offered to pay for the additional security features I'd added since the incident. I declined, but appreciated the gesture. As for the neighborhood impact, my story apparently became a cautionary tale at the homeowners association meetings. They've since implemented a program to help families access the local YMCA at reduced rates, and they're currently raising funds to build a community pool. Mrs. Martinez's parents even made a significant donation to the project, saying they wanted something positive to come from their daughter's mistakes. The retired couple next door has become good friends. We have weekly coffee mornings by the pool during summer, and they keep an eye on my property when I'm traveling for work. They often comment on how peaceful the neighborhood has become since the pool incident was resolved. I've also started hosting monthly pool safety workshops for neighborhood families, teaching kids about respecting private property and water safety. It's my way of turning a negative situation into something positive for the community. Looking back, standing firm on this issue did more than just protect my property rights. It sparked necessary changes in our community and helped a family confront and address their issues. Sometimes being the bad guy who enforces boundaries is actually the kindest thing you can do for everyone involved. I still have the cameras and security system, and I always will, but now they serve more as a reminder of lessons learned than as protection against active threats. And yes, I still host pool parties, proper, invited ones, and the Martinez kids are welcome to attend with their father. They always bring snacks and help clean up afterward, proving that they've learned valuable lessons about respect and boundaries. As summer approaches again, I'm grateful for how this situation resolved itself. It wasn't easy standing my ground, but it was worth it, and to anyone facing a similar situation, don't back down. Your property, your rules, and sometimes enforcing those rules helps others more than enabling bad behavior ever could. The next one is a malicious compliances story. For context, I just went into my old workplace and remembered this story. 5 years ago, I used to work for a large electronics store in Scandinavia. We sold everything from TVs to dishwashers. Being a physical store, we had a lot of display items and often sold them at a lower price when the product was discontinued. Please note that we rarely had the original packaging or manuals lying around. This will be important. This story takes place a late afternoon about 30 minutes before closing. I worked this shift in the computer department and was asked to help at the camera section of the store as I was the go-to person for cameras. I was greeted by a couple who I would guess were in their late 50s, and they were looking at one of the display models. I walked them through the camera's specs, let them test it out, and explained that while we had all the necessary accessories, the original manual and packaging were thrown away. They seemed perfectly fine with this, especially after I offered them a fantastic deal on the camera. We headed to the checkout where they paid, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. That is until the husband turned to me and asked, "Where's the manual?" I was thinking, oh shoot, maybe I didn't explain it well enough. I started to explain again, reiterating that we didn't have the original manual, but that it was easily accessible online. I had even included a link to the manual on their receipt. This was not taken well by the husband, who started raising his voice at me and said, "Online? I brought this product and I want the manual physically so I can read through it at home." Which I do understand, and tried explaining that I normally would print the manual. However, the manual for this particular camera was about 650 pages. Please note that they both are more than capable of looking up the manual, as I saw them browsing the web looking at reviews for the camera. The husband angrily started to berate me for about 5 minutes, about how this wasn't a way to run a business and how he wouldn't leave without it. I tried explaining that the manual was 650 pages, how long that would take to print, and we were closing in around 10 minutes, but he was having none of it and he wouldn't leave without it. Now, I am normally a kind and respectful person and would do everything to fix a problem, but he was being disrespectful and I was paid by the hour anyway. So, with my best customer service voice, I told him, "Sorry, sir, of course the customer is always right," and started printing the 650 pages, while the husband looked smugged at me, probably feeling like he had won over the big man. But the thing was, the printers we had at the sales desk were only meant for printing receipts, so they couldn't print double-sided, and though they were relatively fast, they were not 650 pages fast and only held around 300 sheets of paper at a time, as the minutes ticked by. With each sheet of paper that emerged from the printer, the man's smug expression disappeared. His wife, who had initially seemed passive, began to look annoyed and a bit embarrassed. Then the printer ran out of paper, and you could see the relief in their eyes as they thought the printer was finally done, but that was quickly gone when they saw me coming with a huge stack of paper to fill it up. 20 minutes and 400 pages in, the wife started to look even more desperate, realizing that they were the only customers in a store that closed 10 minutes ago. The husband was beginning to realize his mistake and nervously began to ask when it was done printing. I just smiled with my best customer service smile. We were about 2/3 of the way. He sighed and just continued to look at the mountain of paper that slowly got bigger and bigger. Another refill, and 200 pages later, the husband's defeat was evident. He finally asked if he could just take what had already been printed and leave. But by then, only like 50 pages remained. So I told him that we were almost done, and I would hate if he left without the last pages in case he would miss something important. When the printer finally stopped, I handed him the entire 650-page manual, still smiling, and said, "Here you go. I hope you have a great day and enjoy the camera." They quickly left the store silent and defeated, and I never saw them again. Quick edit to clarify some things. I got paid 1.5 my wage plus afternoon add-in, so staying 30 minutes longer was actually a plus for me. I would have loved to say that the manual was in 6 different languages, but it wasn't. But the manual have so much info that is only relevant if you are a professional photographer, which they were not. Oh, and did I mention that I didn't put any staples or holes in the paper? Good luck keeping it together. The next one is an entitled people story. This is going to be a somewhat long story, but I need to provide some background information first. I am currently homeless and have been single for a year now. I got sick at work and started having seizures. I was a crane operator, but after you start having seizures, you lose the ability to operate anything that goes vroom vroom. My ex-wife began cheating on me almost immediately. And after a bitter divorce, I spent 3 years fighting to get on disability in Canada without a proper diagnosis. Instead of help, they offered me medical assistance in dying, MAID. I eventually ran out of everything, savings, credit cards, and became homeless as of September 28, 2023. This past August, I finally received a proper diagnosis, multiple sclerosis. The seizures aren't caused by MS directly, they are more like a byproduct as they are stress-related. Now, I'm on a ton of medication. In June, I left Toronto for a job opportunity 6 hours north in Sudbury, but they chose not to hire me because I didn't have a fixed address. Thankfully, I found something part-time and I've been working there ever since. So that's the background information out of the way. I don't receive any government support, so I have to pay for my medication out of pocket. And oh boy, it's expensive. It takes both of my paychecks to cover the cost. Luckily, I make a little money off YouTube to survive. It's not much, but I'm living deep in the woods up in Sudbury. It takes me 3 hours to walk to town or 15 minutes if I manage to hitchhike. On Wednesday, I was in town at the small indoor shopping center to fill this month's prescription. I managed to do that, but unfortunately, being homeless and needing medication often equals a lack of money and a lack of things to do, but wait. So, that's what I did. I waited. There's a bench down the hall from the pharmacy with an outlet where I can charge my phone. I typically sit there while waiting for my meds to be packed. I'd also like to mention that I don't really look homeless. My shirt is clean and I keep my body washed. The only thing that might give me away is my slightly muddy boots from always trudging through the woods. I had been sitting on that bench for about an hour. The people at the pharmacy had told me to come back in 3 hours. At one point, a woman pushing a stroller with a dog in it walked by and glanced at me. She kept going, but that was that. About 15 minutes later, she came back and said, "You're still here?" I replied, "Yeah, just waiting on my script." That's Canadian slang for prescription. She walked away again after that. Not even 5 minutes later, the security guards came marching down the hallway. They told me it was time to go and said they were trespassing me for being in the mall with no business. I explained that I was waiting on my meds from the pharmacy. They basically called me a liar, claiming they had received a complaint about a homeless man sitting on that bench all day begging. One thing you need to know about me, I have a lot of pride. Too much pride, in fact. I don't beg, I don't borrow, and I don't steal. I said, "No, I'm just sitting here charging my phone, waiting for my meds." They gave me the usual threat, "Leave the mall or the cops will come." I didn't want to deal with the hassle, so I left. I walked to a park near a bar and sat outside in the cold. It had been snowing. After waiting there for another 60 minutes, I called the pharmacy to ask if my prescription was ready. They said it was, so I made my way back to the mall. I walked in through the front entrance and headed toward the pharmacy. Just as I got to the front of the pharmacy, I heard someone yelling, "Hey you can't be here, you were trespassed!" The security guard caught up to me quickly. I'm not fast on my feet. I walk with a bit of a limp and drag my left leg. Thanks, Mississippi. He told me I was now being criminally trespassed and that the cops were on their way. At that point, I decided to get a little snarky. I said, "Oh yeah? So you're trespassing me from the place where my pharmacy is, where I get the medication that I need? I'm pretty sure that's called discrimination." The guy actually stuttered before responding. He said, "Well, I'm going in with you. If you're lying, you're going to jail." I laughed and said, "Okay, bud." When we got to the pharmacy counter to pick up my meds, the security guard tried to push in front of me to inspect my pickup slip. When he reached for it, I warned him, "If you touch my stuff, I'm going to assume you're trying to hurt me, and I'll defend myself." I also complained to the pharmacist, who said he would follow up with the security company. Damn security. I really don't like security or Karens. Can't stand either of them. The next one is an entitled parent story. Just a little bit ago, me and my mom were trying to plan how I would come see her, as where I am is 10 hours away in a different state. And she suggested I take some money out of my savings for gas and do the drive, and she will pay me back. So guess what I did? That. Put the savings into my checking. Never mind the fact I only have $300 to my name and only had $96 in checking and the rest was in savings, so I have to spend $250 on gas. I'm putting this in entitled parents BC of the stuff she kept saying. I don't remember all of it specifically, but she brought up, well, we drove 9 hours to your graduation, HS, so you can make this, dismissing me whenever I said something, even though she asked, and especially when I kept saying I don't have the money to go shopping or do anything BC I'm trying to save to pay my car insurance in January, $600. And she said, I had it tough too. It's part of growing up. And I told her, hey, please don't try to minimize my situation. After which she blew up on me and telling me she only had $200 when I was born and how she worked hard and that I'm not the only one who's struggling. I just said, I never said I was, and yes, your situation was worse, but that doesn't mean I'm not having a tough time right now. She said, verbatim what I had said, no, you were minimizing my experience. And I said, no, I was trying to explain mine and you overshadowed me. And she says, that I did. Then it was a bit quiet, then she started explaining what road to take, etc. And then the love bombing after, saying how much she loves me and she's so proud of me, etc. Ew, I don't know, I just wanted to rant BC. I don't know if eel crazy, and she wants me to leave first thing in the morning too, so I'm trying to busy myself packing. Also, I don't live with her or my dad, divorced, anymore. I live with my friend's family, and they have relatives over, so there's no room for me. If I didn't go to my mom's, I would be sleeping in my car for a month. That's how long the college dorms close for during break, and it's $300 extra to stay during. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.